Good morning. My name is Reverend Krista Taves, and it's my honor and privilege to be the Minister of Congregational Life of Eliot Unitarian Chapel. Welcome to all of you. For those of you who are joining us by Zoom, it is so good to see your faces. If you're watching from Facebook or YouTube, welcome. Wherever you are, we hope that you feel welcomed into this space. Eliot Unitarian Chapel is a free religious congregation built by those who are committed to living our mission, which is that we are bound in courageous love, growing in spirit, and inspiring compassionate action. Our core values are justice, equity, and compassion. We are a diverse community that strives to welcome all in the fullness of your age, gender, class, race, sexual orientation, religious background, and spiritual convictions. If you're visiting for the first time, a very special welcome to you. We are so glad you found us. Our Sunday greeter, Debbie Eldorat, may be private messaging you to say hi and welcome you here. We've also posted a link to our online guest form in the Zoom chat. Please fill it out and let us know what you're looking for. If you're watching us from YouTube or Facebook, drop us a line at welcome@eliotchapel.org to let us know you're here. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we light a chalice to symbolize that we are entering sacred space and preparing our hearts for the blessing of beloved community. This morning, the Kalina Bockhorst family is lighting our chalice.
For the gift of this day, and for our community of spiritual nurture and compassion, we give thanks. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. May our many sparks meet and merge in communion of heart and soul.
Reverend Krista, don't we have the welcome? We already did that.
That's already taken place, Ken, so let's get the first song queued up. That's all right.
A little bit...
Hang on, everyone. It's coming.
Dissonance instead. The congregational covenant statement is, as a free congregation, we promise to one another our mutual trust and support. To create beloved community, we promise to be kinder to each other than we have to be, to listen fully to each other with an open mind and heart, to speak responsibly and respectfully, to find ways to improve our church for all members and friends.
Today's wisdom story, Beauty and the Beast, is more than 4,000 years old, originating in China and spreading to many cultures around the world. I'm going to tell you a shortened version of the story as written by Geneviève Le Prince de Beaumont. She was a French aristocrat in the 1700s, highly educated and a prolific writer. Her stories appeared in women's magazines for decades. There was once a widowed merchant with 3 girls and 3 boys. The family was very wealthy. The 3 boys were delightful. The 2 older sisters were prideful and often unhappy. But the youngest, named Beauty, was kind and generous and was her father's favorite. For these reasons, her 2 sisters were quite mean to her. Unfortunately, there was a bad storm, and the merchant lost his whole fleet of ships. He was now poor, with only a small house and some land in the country. And he and his sons now tilled the soil. The 2 older sisters never adjusted, but Beauty resolved to accept their new life and took care of their house and made the meals. One day, their father discovered that a ship had been found. Perhaps this would restore his wealth. As he left, he asked Beauty if she wanted anything. "Just a rose," she said. "There are so few of them here." Sadly, the merchant lost his legal battle to have his property returned to him, and he began his trip home no better off than he was before. It was cold, rainy, and windy. As night settled, he became lost. He was so hungry and cold, he thought he would die. But then he saw a light and traveled towards it. It was a large castle. What a relief! But when he approached the castle, no one came to meet him. He took his horse to the stable. No one was there. He went into the house. No one. But in the dining room was a hot fire and a warm meal, and again no one to greet him. Out of respect, he waited by the fire for the master of the house, but his hunger grew too painful, and he ate. He found a bedroom and fell fast asleep. He awoke to sunshine and breakfast waiting downstairs. On the way to the stable, he saw a beautiful rose bush, and remembering Beauty's request, he cut her a bouquet of roses. And immediately a frightful beast appeared. "You ungrateful thief," said the beast. "I saved your life, and you have stolen my roses, which are the most precious thing to me. Prepare for your death." "But I was picking roses for my daughter, who requested them," cried the merchant. "Surely you cannot kill me for that." The beast's heart warmed just a little. "I will forgive you if one of your daughters willingly comes to take your punishment. If one will not come, you must return home. You must return here and face my wrath." So the merchant went home, told his family what had happened and what the beast demanded. Beauty stepped forward. "I will go save your life," she said. Her 3 brothers offered to kill the beast, but the merchant, fearing that he would lose 4 of his children instead of just 1, cautioned them that no one was strong enough to take on the beast. And so Merchant and Beauty began the heartbreaking journey. When they arrived, once again, no one met them. The stable had no one. There was no one at the door. Once again, a fire was burning and the table was set, and they ate. Then the beast appeared. "You are a man of your word," he said to the merchant. "I honor your trustworthiness." Then he turned to Beauty. "Did you come of your own free will?" "Yes," said Beauty, quaking with fear and disgusted by his ugliness. "Your daughter is indeed kind," he said. "You must leave, never to return." And the beast withdrew. When her father left, Beauty wept, certain she would die that night. But then she noticed the beauty of the castle. She found an apartment with her name on it, Beauty's apartment. How odd! She walked in and suddenly, very tired, fell asleep and had a dream. A fairy came to her and said, "Welcome, Beauty, banish fear. You are queen and mistress here. Speak your wishes, speak your will. Swift obedience meets them still." That evening, the beast joined her for dinner. She was so afraid and found him so ugly. But he didn't kill her. Instead, he engaged her in conversation. "This is your home now, Beauty. You are the mistress of the house. Anything you want shall be yours. If my presence is troubling to you, I will withdraw. Do you find me ugly?" And she said, "Yes, you are, but surprisingly good-natured." He appreciated her honesty, and then they had a conversation about virtue and honor, but she could still hardly look at him. He was so frightful. And then he asked, "Will you marry me?" Beauty's heart recoiled. Would he kill her if she said no? But she had to tell the truth. "No, beast, I cannot marry you, for I do not love you." Every evening from then on, the beast appeared at dinner, promised her whatever she wanted. They had an engaging conversation. He asked her to marry him, and she said no. She grew less afraid of him and began to like him, but not enough to marry him. She still had a hard time even looking at him. One night, when he again promised her whatever she wanted, she asked to visit her family. "Of course," he said, "but you must come back in a week, or I will die of grief." She knew this was not a manipulative threat, but the simple truth, and promised to return. She was warmly welcomed by her father and brothers. Her sisters were still miserable. Beauty but was so happy to be home. But she was also worried about her beast. Was he lonely? Was he missing her? Was he all right? 7 days came and went, and her family begged her to stay. She stayed 8 days, then 9, then 10. She knew she was breaking her promise. She grew very concerned about the beast and finally ripped herself away from her family and returned to the castle. And the beast was not well. "You forgot me," he said. "I have been unable to eat or drink or sleep. I am going to die of heartbreak." Beauty felt grief when she imagined living without him. That must mean she loved him. She looked right at him and finally said the words he had been waiting to hear. "I have come to love you. Please live to be my husband." In that moment, the fairy reappeared and transformed the beast into a handsome prince. Beauty learned that he had been under a spell, turned into a beast until a woman married him of her own free will, just as he was. And they were married. And as a relationship had already been built on virtue, they were very happy. And that's the end of our wisdom story. I invite you to join me in prayer. Today's prayer is edited from the original by Alex Jensen. Spirit of life, we find you in those humble places, the quiet, still places where we are held in a love greater than ourselves. You are the wind in our breath, the fire in our souls, the subtle heartbeat of creation all around us. O Spirit, your love is unimposing, yet firm and steadfast, present to all those who would know your peace. You challenge us in our arrogance and move us to listen deeply when we fail, as we always do, to see the fuller picture. Spirit of love, you find the gentle words to speak life into us and hold us when all else feels broken. You remind us that we are loved and saved just as we are. Let us enter into a time of silence for the prayers of our hearts. Spirit of life, our this worldly salvation is found in living life loved. Remind us of who we are, Holy Mystery. Help us to see you in the small everyday moments where you are found. Grant us the wisdom to listen for you and seek you in those unlikely and unexpected places. This we pray in the spirit of love, justice, mercy, and unending compassion. Amen, and blessed be. Every week, we give away half our offering to a not-for-profit in the St. Louis area that shares our core values. This month, our offertory is dedicated to Home Sweet Home, whose mission is furnishing hope. Home Sweet Home is there for families fleeing domestic violence and establishing a new home, for those transitioning out of homelessness or out of incarceration or addiction, and many others find themselves having to start all over again. Home Sweet Home helps many individuals and families recover a sense of dignity and worth by the simple act of providing home furnishings, which are often prohibitively expensive. There are several ways to give. You can text Eliot shared plate in one word with the amount you want to give to 73256. Or you can mail a check with Home Sweet Home in the memo line, or go to eliotchapel.org/giving and choose the Shared Plate Fund. Let us be a generous people. To the work of the Church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. Our reading this morning is a poem by Rainer Maria Rilke called Widening Circles. I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. I may not complete this last one, but I give myself to it. I circle around God, around the primordial tower I've been circling for thousands of years. And I still don't know. Am I a falcon, a storm, or a great song? Thus ends the reading. Fairy tales are quite predictable, aren't they? There's often a pure-hearted, beautiful young woman with a bad stepmother or mean sisters or some cruel fate, and she prevails, or someone prevails on her behalf. Then she is freed from whatever problem is at hand, and she gets the prince. Beauty and the Beast certainly fits this bill. Beauty is a kind, generous, loving, humble woman. She suffers the hatred of her sisters, the loss of the family fortune, and separation from her family. And through all of it, she is gracious and kind, as inside she quakes with fear and a feeling of loss. And she does get the prince, or more aptly in this story, he gets her, and they live happily ever after. It's all pretty predictable. But there's something to this story, this version of the story, that is unique among fairy tales, something you rarely see. Beauty falls in love through conversation. She and the Beast talk every night over dinner. Slowly, a relationship forms and deepens, trust builds, and gradually she has feelings for the Beast. It's a pretty incredible story, if you take out that the Beast forced her father's hand to get into his house. But barring that, it's a story of growing beyond who you thought you could be and finding your freedom through someone's love for you and your love for them. This month, our theme is Widening the Circle. It's the title of an exploration of 21st century Unitarian Universalism that challenges us to look honestly and with open eyes at how we widen the circle and for whom. Through this month, we're going to explore the concept of widening the circle from many angles, starting on the personal level and growing week by week towards the collective community level, a widening that becomes more and more large, that welcomes more and more into our circle of concern, bringing personal healing, social justice, and an interconnected wholeness. Today, we start at the personal level with widening our sense of self. Beauty and the Beast is a story of two people widening their sense of self until they find themselves and each other. Beauty widens her sense of self when her father loses everything, and she adapts to an impoverished life. Then she also widens when she offers to take his place before the Beast. She widens her sense of self in her relationship with the Beast. And finally, she widens herself when she can actually look at him, accept him for who he is, and feel love for him. And the Beast widens his sense of self as well. He widens his sense of self first by pulling back from his bloodthirsty rage and having some compassion for the merchant. He widens himself by moving away from his long years of isolation. He widens himself by promising Beauty anything she wants, keeping his word and respecting her space at all times. Then he widens himself by letting Beauty go when she asks. Today, our focus is on how we as individuals widen our personal sense of self, how we grow our sense of who we are and who we can become. This is one of the ways we connect to love, become love, and offer love. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism, you will soon come to know that love is a pretty important thing for us. It's the center of our faith. Everything we do is about creating more love, being open to love, healing through love, building justice through love, being more whole through love. It's the energy and substance behind everything. Now, just to be clear, we're not talking about some Valentine's Day Hallmark feel-good, mushy kind of love with a red bow tied around it. Great as that is in the moments we get to feel it, we're talking about a deep, lasting, sustaining love, moving in and through all things, which is more powerful than anything we can imagine. Some of us anchor that love in a higher power. Some of us anchor that love in the human spirit. Some of us in a creative, majestic cosmos. We have different theologies and philosophies that hold us in this love, but love is always at the center. We're all hungry for love. Love in our personal lives, love in our communities, love in our divided nation. All of us at some time have had a hard time getting to love. Perhaps someone disappointed us, or we disappointed ourselves, or we faced really hard situations, and it feels like love is just too far away to make a difference. Sometimes it's hard to believe, with all the troubling things happening around us, that love really is more powerful than anything we can imagine. And yet, love is exactly what we hang our hat on. And yes, sometimes it's hard to get to love, but that doesn't mean it isn't close at hand. It's right here. Today, I'm proposing that widening our sense of self is one way to open a path to that life-sustaining love that we all need and cannot live without. I invite you to imagine a time in your life when you couldn't get to love. Either love for yourself or love for another. And honestly, they are usually connected. When you couldn't get to love, what was that like for you? How did you get through it? Maybe you're still in this place, and one of the reasons you're here is that you're looking for a way to the other side. There are some clues in our fairy tale about how to get to love. A tale that is 4,000 years old and appears in many cultures around the world. We have been looking for love for a long time. In the version that we heard this morning, we don't know what happens to the beast until the end of the story, when he transforms back into a man. But in the Disney version, which most of us know, we learn right away what happens to him at the beginning of the movie. The beast was a prince who lost his mother and was twisted by his father into a prideful, selfish man, incapable of empathy. When an old woman shows up and asks for shelter, he dismisses her, not realizing he is being tested. The woman is a fairy in disguise and turns him into a beast for his selfishness and hard-heartedness. She places a rose under a glass. If a woman loves her of her own free will before the last petal falls, he will be freed of the spell. When the merchant shows up, there are just a few petals left. The beast is running out of time and vacillating between desperation and despair. So we know what's at stake when Beauty lands in his home. She, of course, doesn't. Otherwise, how could she truly fall in love? What we can take from this, and what I've taken from this, is that none of us truly knows what is happening inside another person. We often don't know their history. We don't know what they carry or what causes their suffering. It doesn't mean we should be vulnerable to what they become out of their history. It's not our burden. A good example is when the beast asked Beauty to marry her and she kept saying no. Sometimes we struggle to connect to love when we forget that every person has an inner struggle, even someone we've known for years. There are still things we cannot see. A path to love happens when we remind ourselves that every single person we love and encounter has a large universe inside them, and we are seeing but one slice of it. But we are responsible for what we become through our struggles. The prince turned into a beast because of his lack of compassion. Sure, his father raised him to be that way, but as an adult, he became responsible for who he was and what he did with the burden his father put on him. His path to love was to widen his sense of self, the sense of self that his father bestowed on him, and become someone bigger, someone who could love and be loved. The beast paid a huge price for how he initially handled what his father made of him. He lost almost everything and was left depending on the slim possibility of someone actually falling in love with him. And when I think about the beast and that process he went through, I wonder about us. What have we inherited from those in the foundation of our early years? What have we held on to? What have we had to let go of? And how hard was it to let go? I mean, all of us have this. There were some difficult aspects of my upbringing and that I could not set aside early in my life. I mean, there's some things from my upbringing that I treasure, but there were other more difficult things that persisted stubbornly, things that took me a long time to see, that got in the way of being open to love. It took and still takes attention and persistence to continue widening my sense of self so that I can manage those more difficult things and limit their harm to me and others, while also honoring those things from my family I'm very proud to carry on. And it's the same for all of us. We all got a mixed bag. But once we're adults, we are responsible for it. We are responsible for getting help if there are things that close us off to love and harm those who are close to us. When we take responsibility for those things that were handed to us, we're opening a path to love and a path to restoration and wholeness. What has stayed with me in de Beaumont's version of Beauty and the Beast is that there are few heroic acts. Unlike the Disney version, where both dramatically save each other from a series of life-threatening emergencies, instead, in de Beaumont's version, their days have an almost boring pattern. They spend most of their time alone, meet for dinner, and talk about all kinds of things. And in hindsight, we know that the Beast is managing his desperation, and Beauty is managing her shock and loss. It's in the ordinariness of their daily connection, shaped by their continuous choice to choose virtue and kindness, that widens their sense of who they can be. And in this widening, love can take hold. A path has opened for them. Each of them has expanded what they see as beautiful. The Beast is pretty clear. He saw power and control as beautiful before the curse, and after, he understands that human connection is the most beautiful thing there is. Beauty literally reshapes what she considers beautiful. She's able to look the Beast in the eye and not turn away. So here are some of the paths to love that I've held up today. 1, being aware that everyone has an inner struggle. 2, taking responsibility for our inner struggle and widening who we are through and beyond it. 3, finding love in ordinary places and through ordinary actions. Love isn't about heroicism or drama. It's about being open to what and who is in front of us. And 4, expanding our assumptions about what beauty is so we can perceive the beauty in ourselves and in others. At the beginning of this message, we established that this is the first part of a larger journey we're exploring this month about widening our circles of concern. We've started by zooming in on the personal, and week by week, we'll pan out so that our view gets wider and wider. As Unitarian Universalists, we have a deep commitment to inclusion, diversity, and equity, which means continuously widening our circle of concern, knowing that this calls for us to be open to changing our sense of what is true, what is right, and what is asked of us. Ultimately, we're called to be a people committed to the ongoing work of justice equity, and compassion. And one way of preparing ourselves is to be right with ourselves, to be just with ourselves, to be compassionate with ourselves, and to be committed to equity in our small circles. We prepare ourselves by being right with ourselves to be the kind of people who have spiritually tended our path to love. Social justice isn't simply extending outward. It's also about going inside, opening our eyes to our own struggle and widening our sense of self to find beauty and love wherever we are, no matter how ordinary. So this week, I invite you to reflect on a time when you were asked to widen your sense of self. What did you do? Who was with you on the journey? And who are you today because of it? What is your next step in widening your sense of self? I'm betting you'll find some rose petals of truth to hold on to as you keep growing, keep loving, and keep widening the circle. As we close, I'd like to thank Adam Kosberg, our music director, for selecting our final song from Beauty and the Beast in the Broadway musical. It's called A Change in Me, and it's perfect for setting us up for this journey we'll be going on this month. Love to you and yours. Amen, and blessed be.
There's been a change in me, a kind of moving on. For what I used to be, I still depend upon. For now I realize that good can come from bad, that may not make me wise, but oh, it makes me glad, and I never thought I'd leave behind my childhood dreams, but I don't mind, for now I love the world I see. Oh, change of heart, a change in me. For in my dark despair, I slowly understood my perfect world out there had disappeared for good, but in its place I feel a truer life begin, and it's so good and real. It must come from within, and I never thought I'd leave behind my childhood dreams, but I don't mind. I'm where and who I want to be. No change of heart. a change in me. No change of heart, a change in me.
Before we close our service, I invite you to join our Zoom coffee hour at noon, where you'll have the chance to explore this morning's message with others. If you would like to come but aren't on our mailing list, you can sign up for our mailing list on the front page of our website, and you'll begin receiving invitations to our services and coffee hour. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you so much for being here today. Love to you all.